With a little over a week under my belt and about 500 miles on the clock, let's talk about what's gone wrong with the Mustang Mach-E and my complaints about the all-new 2021 EV by Ford. But before I dive directly into that, let me say that the automotive reviewing industry is a pretty small world, so I know pretty much everybody out there that has driven a Mach-E or is driving one currently. And I have to say that I have not had any of the charging issues that I know that some folks out there with their Mach-E press cars have had. This one is a full production model. I don't know exactly whether the ones that I drove earlier were pre-production or full production models. Either way, this one has not had any of the DC fast charging or level 2 charging issues that I know some folks have talked about. But that said, as much as I love the Mach-E already, I do have a few complaints. My first complaint is about the phone as key functionality. Right now the car's on, so I'm going to go ahead and turn the car off and then get my phone out. So car is now off. This has a power button, unlike a Tesla, but like every other Ford out there. And I'm going to take my phone away from the vehicle. Theoretically, as I walk away, the vehicle should lock. And then theoretically, as I approach the Mach-E, it should unlock itself, but it doesn't always work, I've discovered. There we go, it finally did, but I had to press the button about 5 times. And then I have the same problem when I'm inside. What's a little odd is that even if the vehicle will let me inside, sometimes when I go to press the power button, we get no key detected. And you have to press it 2 or 3 times or wait a little while, then the key will be detected, and then you can start the vehicle again. I have to temper this complaint with a feature that I do actually really like, which is the number pad right over here on the driver's door. We see this in a wide variety of different Fords. The Ford Mustang Mach-E will let you drive the vehicle with the phone as a key, with the actual key as a key, or with no key at all, because you can enter the vehicle with the passcode right here on the door. Then once you're inside, you can enter a password that you set on the infotainment screen, and then you can start the car and drive it away. So if you're the kind of person that wants to go surfing or other outdoor sports activities, I remember whitewater rafting and being super concerned the entire time, oh my God, what happens if I lose my key? Well, with this kind of vehicle, you don't actually have to worry about that because you simply enter your code right here on the door unlocks, you open the door, start the vehicle with the passcode. That brings me to complaint 2 and 3, which I guess are related. Why is it that we only get one remote for the Mach-E instead of 2 like you get with pretty much every other Ford? What if you're the kind of shopper that would like to use a key rather than their phone as a key or any other method? You would have to pay for an extra key, and that is a bit of a bummer. The other thought is, if you take a look at this key, you'll notice I can open the rear cargo area, but I cannot open the front trunk via remote. I have to use the lever inside. Now, Ford says that at some point later you will be able to use the phone app in order to open the frunk, but there's just no frunk button on the remote. My next complaint is the frunk divider itself. This is theoretically a permanent frunk divider, but obviously we can remove it. You can just use a screwdriver to pull these little tabs out, and then you could pull the frunk divider out, which I'm definitely going to do. Ford says there's some legislative reasons why they have the divider in the cargo area, but as you can see, you can definitely easily remove it. And then we have some drain holes down at the bottom if you want to use this as a cooler. With the divider removed, like I expect most Mach-E shoppers will do, you can actually put a 22-inch roller bag right here in the front trunk, and you could get something that's a little bit longer. So certain really compact strollers might even fit up front, and still enough room for those cup holders to operate. And perhaps more surprising than that, taller items than you might think will actually fit in here because the Mach-E has kind of a bulging hood. And if I zoom in closer here, you can see why. You actually have an extra about 2 to 3 inches of height. My next complaint is about Carplay. Carplay does use a decent portion of the screen. You can see that this is probably about 8 or 9 inches across as far as the screen real estate goes, and it supports USB and wireless connections, your choice. However, it's not horribly reliable. Now, I don't think this car is going to do it for me, but 9 out of 10 times that I'm behind the wheel, I swear, if I go to any of the various screens in this system, the control panel here or the vehicle settings, things like that, and then I want to go back to CarPlay and I press this CarPlay button, we don't actually get CarPlay. Of course, this time it's actually going to work for me. But this is the screen that you usually get. And I'm not the only one that's had this problem. I've noticed a lot of complaints on the Mach-E forums and other reviewers have had the same issue. And then when the vehicle is doing that, for some reason, the track forward and backward buttons on the steering wheel don't work. What's odd is that sometimes the problem seems to fix itself. So, for instance, right now, everything seems to be working because I can track forward, backward with the buttons on the steering wheel, and CarPlay seems to function. While we're on the inside, let's talk about my next wine, which is this enormous panoramic glass roof. Now, this definitely improves headroom, especially rear seat headroom, which tends to be a premium in electric vehicles. Sitting back here in the rear seat, I have about 1.5 inches of headroom left, but my complaint is there's no shade. It doesn't electrochromatically dim or anything like that. So in hot sun, I have exactly the same complaint about this roof as I have in the Tesla Model Y or the Jaguar I-Pace or pretty much any of the new crop of EVs, because this is a very trendy thing to do. I'm sure the aftermarket is going to be full of shade alternatives and tinting alternatives that you can do aftermarket, but I really wish that Ford had either offered a regular steel roof in the Mach E or just a regular sunroof, because that's probably the option that I would have selected. My next complaint is a bit nuanced, so bear with me. The Ford Mustang Mach-E is certainly less efficient than the most efficient vehicles in this particular segment at the moment, but the Mach-E has an enormous battery pack. This battery is nearly 100 kilowatt hours. It's definitely larger than the one that we find in the Tesla Model Y. And Ford decided to go a slightly different route when they were doing their EPA validations for the EPA range figures on the Mach-E. Car manufacturers are responsible for calculating their own EPA numbers, so I can't exactly say what Ford did as far as the calculations go, but I can say that the Mach-E is much closer in real-world numbers to its EPA range. That's not what we see out of Tesla. Tesla seems to really milk the system and get those numbers as big as possible. And Ford argued with me, a lot of Ford engineers argued with me on this particular point with the Mach-E, but my takeaway here is play the game that everybody else is playing. I don't care if the rules are silly, if the rules are stupid, if the numbers aren't realistic, because even an unrealistic number gives us something that can be compared. So I would rather that Ford used exactly the same calculations and exactly the same methods that Tesla does, because then we have a number that can be compared one vehicle to the other. Now, I will say that in colder weather, the Mach-E is likely going to be even less efficient than it is out here in this mild climate of Northern California, because it does not have a heat pump. However, the least expensive Mach-E after incentives and the federal tax credit is going to be a whopping $16,000 less than a Tesla Model Y, so definitely keep that in mind. For my next wine, I will address the tires. These are 225/55 R19 tires on 19-inch rims. I love the wheels, but the tires are a little bit skinny. If Ford wasn't going to push the envelope with the range figures, I wish they would have given us wider and or grippier tires. Would have loved to have seen this with 235s or 245s. Of course, theoretically, that would be the Mustang GT. It is going to get wider and grippier tires than we see on this model, but that said, I still would have liked this model to have had slightly wider tires. You will definitely notice a handling difference between this and some of the competition, mainly because of the tire choices. Bear in mind that because of the battery pack and the 5 doors, this is the heaviest Mustang you can buy in America right now. It weighs around 4,500 pounds, pretty typical for a compact EV crossover. Speaking of EV crossover or EV sport utility vehicles, we have the ground clearance in the Mustang Mach-E, which is actually lower than the Polestar 2, which is being advertised as an electric sedan. This is also lower to the ground than the Tesla Model Y, and interestingly enough, depending on exactly the version of the regular 2-door Mustang you're looking at, you could get either identical or slightly higher ground clearance in those models. This is just 1/10 of an inch higher off the ground in terms of clearance than the current generation Ford Mustang GT. If you want an EV and you want more off-road ability, your only real option at the moment on sale today is the Jaguar I-Pace, because it will jack itself up with the adaptive air suspension to over 10 inches of ground clearance, so nearly double what we find in this Mach-E. And if you're willing to wait, then that would be the Rivian SUV. And there you have it. Those are my unvarnished complaints about my new 2021 Ford Mustang Mach-E. Be sure and hit that subscribe button, because I am going to be having a range test showdown between this and a Tesla Model Y. A viewer has kindly offered their brand new Tesla Model Y. It's a dual motor with the big battery pack, and we're going to be doing a caravan style range test. So we're just going to hop in the vehicles at 100% battery charge, 2 vehicles driving, one right after the other, and then we'll see which one runs out of juice first. I'll see all of you later.